Amelia Carter pulled her borrowed denim jacket tighter against the early morning chill as she steered her weathered sedan into the parking lot of Horizon Bistro's Branch 12, the neon open 24-hour sign flickering through the drizzle. She was 48, CEO of a restaurant chain she'd built from a single roadside diner. But today she was Ellen Shaw, a tired traveler with a crumpled newspaper and a faded baseball cap to mask her identity. The numbers had been nagging at her for weeks. Branch 12's revenue was stellar, surpassing targets for 4 quarters, yet the staff turnover rate was a staggering 42%, the highest in the region, and employee engagement scores were scraping the bottom. Amelia hadn't come for the coffee or the warm blueberry muffins the chain was known for. She'd come to see what the spreadsheets couldn't show, to feel the pulse of a place she'd once poured her heart into. She stepped out, her boots crunching on wet gravel, and adjusted her posture to a slight slouch, just enough to fade into the background. Inside, the diner hummed with the clatter of plates and the low murmur of the early shift. But something felt off. The staff moved with a mechanical rhythm, their smiles tight, their eyes distant, as if pride had long been replaced by routine. Amelia chose a corner booth with a clear view of the counter, her newspaper spread open but her attention fixed on the servers. That's when Amelia noticed Leila Bennett, a server in her late 30s with a frayed apron, refilling coffee mugs and clearing plates with a care that stood out against the staff's mechanical rhythm, her quiet intensity hinting at an unseen burden. As she passed, Amelia caught a snippet of conversation between Leila and another server, her voice low but sharp. "The tips don't go to us who work the tables. They go to Ethan, Nathan's cousin. It's just how it is." The words landed like a stone in Amelia's chest, not because they were loud, but because they were said with the resignation of someone who'd stopped expecting fairness. She'd built Horizon to be a place where hard work was seen, where every plate served mattered. But here, in this amberlit diner, something was rotting beneath the surface. Leila approached with a small tray, setting down a steaming cup and a single slice of toast with a gentle precision that made Amelia's throat tighten. "Coffee and toast, just in case you want butter." "I brought some," Leila said, her voice polite but subdued, her eyes flickering with something unspoken. Amelia nodded, keeping her tone casual. "Busy morning, huh? Tips must be decent at this hour." Leila's pause was brief, but her gaze dropped, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Morning shifts are slow for tips, especially when they're split unevenly. Some of us don't see much at all." The words were soft, but they cracked open a truth Amelia hadn't anticipated, a fracture in the system she'd trusted. She watched Leila return to the floor, weaving between tables with a grace born of necessity, while Ethan, young and overly confident, lingered by the PA system, tapping the screen with a familiarity that didn't match his role. Amelia's heart ached not just for Leila, but for every server who'd been made to feel invisible in a place meant to be their home. This wasn't just a diner. It was a betrayal of everything she'd built. There was a quiet dignity in Leila's work, a resilience that made Amelia's chest tighten, because it was clear this woman wasn't just serving tables, she was carrying the weight of a system that didn't see her. The diner's morning rush had picked up the air thick with the scent of sizzling bacon and the hum of conversation. But Amelia's focus stayed on Leila, who seemed to be everywhere at once, refilling mugs, wiping spills, and offering a soft word to a frazzled mother at table 7. Yet, she never approached the POS terminal, where Ethan, the manager's cousin, stood like a gatekeeper, his fingers dancing across the screen with a confidence that felt misplaced for a part-time server. Amelia leaned forward, her newspaper forgotten, and caught Leila's eye as she passed. "You've got a knack for keeping this place running," Amelia said, her voice warm but probing. "Must feel good to see those tips stack up." Leila's hands paused mid-wipe, and for a moment, her guarded expression softened, revealing a flicker of something raw, exhaustion maybe, or a truth she'd learned to bury. "Tips don't really stack up for me," she said, her voice barely above the clink of dishes. "I'm on the supplemental staff list. No access to the POS, no digital tips. Ethan and Nathan handle all that." The words were matter-of-fact, but they hit Amelia like a confession, each syllable laced with a resignation that felt heavier than anger. Leila hesitated, then reached into her apron and pulled out a small, weathered journal, its cover creased and edges soft from months of being tucked away. "I started keeping track," she said, her voice dropping lower, as if the walls themselves might listen. just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Lila slid a worn journal across the table, its pages filled with neat handwriting dates, table numbers, and tip discrepancies circled in red, revealing she'd lost $720 in 1 month to an unfair system. Amelia's throat tightened as she read a margin note. Lost $720 this month. No one asks how it's split. Lila's eyes met hers, not pleading, but searching, as if testing whether this stranger would care. Amelia closed the journal, her hands steady but her heart racing with a mix of fury and grief. This wasn't just about money. It was about a woman who'd been erased by a system meant to reward her. She pulled out her phone, angling it discreetly to snap photos of each page, every red circle, every timestamp that proved something was wrong. Then, with a pen from her pocket, she scribbled a note on a napkin. Keep documenting, Lila. Don't show this to anyone yet. I'll be back. She tucked it inside the journal's cover and slid it back, her eyes locking with Lila's for a moment, a silent promise passing between them. Lila nodded, slipping the journal back into her apron, and returned to the floor, her pace unchanged, but her shoulders a fraction lighter. As if sharing the truth had loosened something inside her, Amelia watched her go, her gaze shifting to Ethan, who was laughing with a regular by the POS, his perfect uniform and slicked-back hair a stark contrast to Lila's worn apron. Nathan Brooks, the manager, emerged from the back office, his crisp shirt and easy smile masking the kind of authority that felt too polished, too practiced. Amelia noticed how the other servers, young, nervous, or just tired, steered clear of the POS, their trays heavy with work but their names absent from the digital ledger. The diner's warmth, its amber glow and soft clatter, felt like a lie. Now, a facade hiding a machine that rewarded connection over effort. Amelia's mind raced back to the early days of Horizon, when she'd served tables herself, her hands calloused from carrying trays, her heart full from the small victories of a fair day's pay. Lila's journal wasn't just evidence, it was a mirror, reflecting how far her company had strayed from the values she'd etched into its foundation. She sipped her cold coffee, the bitterness sharp, and made a decision. This wasn't just about Branch 12. It was about every person like Lila, working in the shadows of a system that had forgotten them. Amelia Carter sat in her office at Horizon Bistro's headquarters, the city skyline muted through the rain-streaked window, her phone still warm from the photos of Lila's journal, each page a testament to a truth buried under the polished surface of her company. The weight of those red-inked numbers, $720 stolen from one woman in a single month, pressed against her chest, not just as a CEO but as someone who'd once believed her restaurants could be a refuge for hard work. She dialed Sarah Kim, her head of internal investigations, a woman whose sharp mind and 7 years of unraveling corporate fraud made her Amelia's most trusted ally. "Sarah, I need you to dig into Branch 12's PA system." Quietly, Amelia said, her voice steady but urgent, forwarding the journal photos with a tap. "Look for role assignments, tip distributions, anything that doesn't align." Sarah's response was immediate, no questions, just a crisp on it. By the next morning, Sarah's team had activated a silent audit mode on Branch 12's POS, a ghost protocol that tracked every transaction without alerting the staff. The first report landed in Amelia's inbox before dawn, and as she scrolled through the data, the diner's warm glow faded into something colder, more calculated. The system revealed a hidden role labeled Priority Access, assigned to only 3 accounts: Nathan Brooks, the manager, Ethan, his cousin, and a mysterious KitchenAid 04 with no corresponding HR file. This shadow account had clocked in for 22 of the last 30 days, yet no one in the branch could name its owner. Sarah's audit confirmed Lila's journal, $5,200 in digital tips over a month, with 70% diverted to Ethan and a ghost account, KitchenAid 04, tied to no real employee. Lila's journal had been meticulous, but this was systemic, a deliberate rerouting of earnings disguised as routine configuration. Amelia's fingers hovered over her keyboard, her mind flashing back to a case 2 years prior at Branch 9, where Nathan, then a junior manager, had been linked to a similar ghost employee scheme. The case had collapsed for lack of evidence, but now the pattern was unmistakable, a thread connecting past suspicions to the present. Sarah's next finding deepened the cut. A shell company, Brightpath Services, was receiving weekly processing fees from Branch 12, amounts that matched the missing tip totals to the cent. The company's registration traced back to an email Nathan had used before his promotion, a detail so blatant it felt like a taunt. Amelia leaned back in her chair, the city's hum distant beyond the glass. She'd promised her first hires a place where work was rewarded, not gamed, but here was Nathan, a man she'd promoted, turning her promise into a lie. She thought of Lila, her worn journal, her quiet insistence on recording the truth, even when no one listened. Amelia's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for numbers now, she was fighting for the people who'd believed in her vision. Sarah's voice crackled through a follow-up call. It's not just branch 12. We're seeing similar role manipulations in branches 5 and 19. Same pattern, different names. Amelia's jaw tightened. This wasn't a single bad actor, but a network, a machine built to siphon effort from the invisible. She stood, pacing the office, her reflection faint in the window. The data was clear, but clarity brought a new weight. This would mean confronting not just Nathan and Ethan, but a culture that had let this fester. She thought of her own early days, waiting tables, counting tips to pay rent, the small thrill of a fair night's earnings. Leela's face came to mind, her steady hands, her eyes that held both exhaustion and defiance. Amelia knew she couldn't stop at branch 12. This was about every server who'd been erased by a system meant to protect them. She sent Sarah one last instruction: map every transaction, every override, across all branches. We're not just fixing this, we're tearing it down. As she hung up, Amelia glanced at the photos of Leela's journal on her screen, the red ink like a heartbeat, a reminder that fairness wasn't just a policy but a fight. She wasn't sure what she'd find when she returned to branch 12, but she knew one thing: Lila's truth, scribbled in that fragile notebook, was about to change everything. The morning rush at Horizon Bistro's branch 12 was a symphony of clinking mugs and sizzling griddles, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee and buttery toast. But beneath the bustle, a quiet tension simmered as Leela Bennett wove through tables, her apron stained from an early spill, her movements precise yet carrying the weight of unseen labor. Amelia Carter stepped through the diner's door at 9:14 a.m., no longer Ellen Shaw, no faded cap or slouched posture, but the CEO in a tailored navy suit, her presence cutting through the din like a blade. Sarah Kim followed close behind, her tablet glowing with real-time data, a digital map of the betrayal Amelia was about to unravel. The bell above the door barely jingled, but heads turned, servers paused mid-step, customers glanced up from their plates, and Nathan Brooks, leaning casually against the service bar, froze, his polished smile faltering as Amelia's eyes met his. Ethan, stationed at the PA's terminal, slowed his tapping, his confidence replaced by a flicker of unease. Amelia walked to the center of the diner, her heels clicking softly on the linoleum, and placed a hand on the counter, the gesture deliberate, grounding. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the room. Horizon was built on fairness, but that promise was broken here. She nodded to Sarah, who tapped her tablet, projecting a graph onto a small screen behind the counter, stark visual of tip distributions, Ethan's name dominating with 70% of the pool. Despite serving a fraction of the tables, gasps rippled through the staff, and Leela, holding a coffee pot, stood still, her eyes wide but steady. Amelia turned to Nathan, whose crisp shirt now seemed to mock his authority. "You created a hidden role, priority access, to funnel earnings to your cousin and a ghost account that doesn't exist in our HR system," she said, her tone even but unyielding. "You turned fairness into a favor, and that ends now." Ethan opened his mouth, but Amelia's gaze stopped him cold. "You didn't earn those tips through work," she said. "You took them through a system you rigged." Sarah swiped to another screen, revealing Brightpath Services, the shell company tied to Nathan's old email, its weekly fees matching the stolen tips. The diner felt smaller now, the air heavy with the weight of truth exposed. Nathan's face drained of color, his usual charm, replaced by a tight-lipped silence, while Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his hands no longer touching the POS. Amelia faced the staff, her voice softening but resolute. "Effective immediately, Nathan and Ethan are suspended pending legal review. This isn't just about one branch, it's about every one of you who shows up, works hard, and deserves to be seen." She gestured to the POS terminal. "Starting today, This system will track every tip transparently, linked to your shift logs, not personal connections. A young server, Mia, barely out of her teens, clutched a tray tighter, her eyes glistening with something like hope. Lila, standing near table 6, exhaled, her shoulders easing as if a weight she'd carried for months had begun to lift. Amelia's heart ached not from anger, but from the realization that her company had failed people like Lila, people who'd kept the diners alive while being pushed into the shadows. She scanned the room, seeing faces she'd never met but felt responsible for. Their aprons worn but their resolve unbroken. "If you've served, you'll be credited," she said. "If you've worked, you'll now be counted." Sarah tapped her tablet again, activating the new protocol, and the PAS screen flickered, displaying a live feed of tip assignments tied to actual service. A soft chime sounded as Mia logged in, her name appearing for the first time, a small victory that felt monumental. The customers, sensing the gravity, watched in silence, some nodding in quiet support. Nathan tried to speak, his voice low, but Amelia raised a hand. "This isn't a discussion," she said. "It's a reckoning." He stepped back, his eyes darting to Ethan, a wordless acknowledgement that their game was over. The staff didn't cheer. The moment was too raw, too real. Leela set down her coffee pot, her hands steady, and for the first time that morning, she stood a little taller, her gaze meeting Amelia's with a quiet strength that needed no words. Amelia felt a pang of pride, not for herself, but for Lila, who'd carried the truth alone until now. As she and Sarah prepared to leave, Amelia glanced at the diner's amber glow. No longer a facade, but a promise being rebuilt, table by table. The confrontation wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something new, something fair, and it started with the people who'd been invisible for too long. The sun rose over Horizon Bistro's Branch 12 a month later, casting a soft glow through the diner's windows, where the scent of fresh coffee mingled with the sizzle of eggs on the griddle. But the air carried a new energy, one of purpose rather than resignation. Lila Bennett, no longer bound to the relentless pace of the morning rush, stood near the counter, her apron traded for a simple clipboard as she guided a group of new hires through the updated POS system, her voice clear and steady, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned her place. Amelia Carter's confrontation had sparked a transformation, not just in Branch 12 but across the entire Horizon network, where the new tip-sharing protocol now tied every dollar to verified shift logs, its transparent display chiming softly with each transaction table. $8.64 total, $12 tip. Mia T. Table 15, $39 total, $7 tip. Javiera. The staff worked openly now, their names and tips tracked transparently. Leela's promotion to regional trainer had come swiftly, a role that sent her to branches 5, 19, and beyond, where she shared not just the mechanics of the new system but her story, a quiet testament to the power of holding on to truth. At Branch 7, a server named Aisha pulled her aside after a training session, her voice trembling. "I saw my name on the tip screen today, and it felt like I existed for the first time," she said, her eyes bright with tears. Lila nodded, her own throat tight, remembering the weight of her journal, its pages once her only proof she wasn't invisible. At Branch 22, a part-time cook, who'd quit months earlier, returned, drawn by rumors of a system that didn't erase him. "I just want my work mailboxes to matter," he told Lila, and she understood, because she'd once wanted the same. Back at headquarters, Amelia pored over the latest reports, her office quieter now, the city's hum a distant backdrop. Employee turnover had dropped by 20% across the network, a number that felt like a victory but wasn't the one she cared about most. Feedback forms now asked, "Do you feel seen?" Servers wrote of feeling valued, their names finally on the POS screen. Amelia's eyes stung as she read it, her mind drifting to Lila, whose courage had sparked this change. Lila's trainings were more than technical. They were a bridge between the company's past promises and its new reality. Each session a reminder that fairness wasn't a policy but a daily choice. At Branch 12, the staff moved differently now, their steps lighter, their banter genuine, as if the diner itself had exhaled. Mia, the young server who'd clutched her tray during the confrontation, now laughed as she taught a new hire how to balance coffee pots, her confidence growing with each shift. Javier, a quiet line cook, no longer ducked out early, his name now appearing regularly on the tip log, a small validation that kept him showing up. Lila, though, was the heart of the change, her presence a quiet anchor. She didn't speak of her journal anymore, but its impact lingered in every chime of the POS, every name displayed. Amelia visited Branch 12 one evening, slipping in unnoticed, and watched Lila train a new server, her hands gesturing patiently as she explained how to check shift logs. The diner felt alive, its amber light no longer hiding cracks but illuminating effort. Lila caught Amelia's eye across the room, and a silent understanding passed between them, no words, just a shared recognition of what had been won. Amelia thought of the early days, when she'd dreamed of a company where people like Lila could thrive, not just survive. The reports on her desk showed progress, but it was Lila's steady voice, the way she stood a little taller, that told the real story. This wasn't just about fixing a system. It was about restoring dignity, one table at a time. As Lila finished her session, a new hire whispered, "Thank you for making this feel fair," and Lila smiled, a small, genuine curve that held years of unspoken struggle. Amelia left quietly, her heart full but heavy, knowing the work wasn't done. Fairness wasn't a finish line but a commitment, renewed every day. Amelia Carter eased into the familiar corner booth at Horizon Bistro's Branch 12 one quiet morning. The diner's amber glow softer now, as if the light itself had learned to rest. The air carried the comforting hum of brewing coffee and the gentle clatter of plates, but what struck her most was the absence of the old tension, replaced by a rhythm that felt alive, human, purposeful. She wore no disguise this time, just a simple sweater, her presence unassuming yet deliberate, a silent return to the place where everything had changed. The POS terminal near the counter chimed steadily, its transparent display flashing names and tips in real time. Table 3, $52 total, $10 tip, Mia T. Table 10, $78 total, $15 tip. Javier R. A quiet testament to a system finally doing what it was meant to do. Lila Bennett wasn't on the floor anymore. She stood by the counter, clipboard in hand, guiding a new server named Sam through the shift log process. Her voice calm but carrying a strength that didn't need to shout. Amelia watched her, struck by how Lila's presence seemed to anchor the room, her once worn apron now a memory, replaced by a quiet confidence that drew eyes without demanding them. The staff moved confidently now, their banter light, their work visible. Amelia's coffee arrived without fanfare, delivered by Mia, who offered a shy smile before hurrying back to her tables. The toast was warm, a single pat of butter melting into its center, and Amelia felt a pang of nostalgia for the early days of Horizon, when every small act of service felt like a victory. She thought of Lila's journal, its creased pages and re-inked truths, now a relic of a fight that had reshaped not just this diner but every branch in the network. Lila's role as regional trainer had carried her story far, her quiet resolve inspiring servers and cooks who'd once felt erased. At Branch 31, a dishwasher had approached her after a training, his hands still damp from the sink, and said, "I didn't know my work could count until you showed us." Lila had nodded, her eyes glistening, because she knew that feeling too well. Now, as she coached Sam on checking his PA's access, her words were deliberate, each one a reminder that fairness wasn't a gift but a right. Amelia sipped her coffee, its warmth spreading through her, and reflected on the past month, the 20% drop in turnover. The feedback forms filled with stories of belonging, the way servers like Mia stood taller, their names no longer absent from the ledger. But it was Lila's transformation that stayed with her, a woman who'd once carried her proof in secret, now leading others to claim their own. Before leaving, Amelia folded a $20 bill beneath her plate and tucked a handwritten note. Beside it, "Your courage changed everything, Lila. Keep showing up." She slipped out quietly, but not before catching Lila's eye. A fleeting glance that held a shared understanding, a bond forged in the fight for what was right. Later that day, Lila found the note while clearing the table, her fingers pausing. As she read it, her breath catching not from surprise but from recognition. She didn't open it again, she didn't need to. Instead, she returned to the break room, where her old journal sat in her bag, its edges worn, its ink smudged from months of being her only witness. Lila pulled it out, its weight familiar but no longer heavy, and began removing each page, placing them carefully into an envelope. On the front, she wrote in steady handwriting, For whoever comes next, your truth matters. Keep it, in case you need proof you're not alone. She sealed it and left it on the desk of Branch 12's new manager, a woman named Clara, who'd started the week before, tasked with carrying the transparency system forward. Lila didn't linger. She didn't need ceremony. The envelope, left for the new manager, ensured Lila's fight would guide others. As she stepped back onto the floor, Sam approached, his face bright with a question about shift logs, and Lila answered with the same patience she'd once reserved for her journal, her voice a steady guide. The diner hummed around her, its light no longer hiding dust, but illuminating effort, its sounds no longer masking doubt, but celebrating work. Amelia, now miles away, carried the image of Lila's steady hands and clear eyes, a reminder that justice wasn't loud or triumphant, it was quiet, persistent, built one truthful moment at a time. Lila too felt the shift, not in the diner's walls but in herself. A woman who'd learned that fairness wasn't a reward but a commitment, renewed every day, every table, every name on the screen. The envelope on Clara's desk would wait, for whoever needed it next, a small, powerful legacy of a fight that had changed everything.